Loaded up for Reinhardt, back for Verhaeghe, over to Montour. Kachuk on it, back to Montour, down low, puck up, and touchdown! Overtime winner! The Rats hit the ice, and the Rat Pack is going back to New York with a series tied 2-2.
Florida, New York, game 4 in the books. We're all tied up at 2s. It is now a best 2 out of 3. Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Elliotte, did the right team win this game?
Let me answer it this way, because I cannot answer any of your questions without morphing it into another question.
This is like some people treat the menu like a suggestion. I can ask you something. It's kind of a menu suggestion. I'm going to go off the menu, man.
No, I substitute orders.
And answer the question that I really want to answer, regardless of what
I look at it this way.
Spit out. Okay.
It's fair that this series is 2-2, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm fine with it. Listen, to be honest with you, whatever gets us to 7 games of this, I'm good with. Because I really don't care who wins. I just want to see 7 games of it. So if this is the route we're going to take, so be it.
Both these series are very similar in the sense that there are moments during the game where you feel that one team is going to win 80-0. And then there's moments during the game where you feel that same team is going to lose 100-0. And once again, that happened in this one. Like, there were moments where Shesterkin absolutely bailed out the Rangers.
And there were moments,
yes. And there were moments where Bobrovsky just bailed out the Panthers. And by the way, one thing, I know it's a hilarious story. Unfortunately, it isn't true. Kreider did not throw Kachuk's mouthguard into the crowd. It went straight up, and it landed on the ground. Now, he may have been trying to do it, but he failed in his attempt. Good effort, no achievement.
If he was trying to do it, he's lucky that he didn't do it. You know why? You know what the penalty is for that?
Yeah, it's a suspension.
It's game misconduct.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. It's a game misconduct. That's right.
It's rule 53.5. So he may have tried to throw it. The fact that he couldn't actually saved him a game misconduct. Would have been a great story. Would have been a great story, but sorry. He saved himself a game misconduct on that one. Anyhow, continue.
So unfortunately that didn't happen, even though we were all kind of laughing at the attempt. Like, look, I look at it this way, Jeff. It's fair karma that this series is 2-2. It should be 2-2. The teams are evenly matched. There are players on both teams that people are looking at and saying, get going here. Let's get going here. We need more from these particular players. And I just have to feel that the way the ice was tilted against Adam Fox tonight, that he's really battling something. And we all know he's playing hurt to some degree, but it's probably more than we realize. But you know what they have to do? They have to put him on the same program that they put on Philip Hedl and Blake Wheeler, because both these guys were supposed to be out for the season. And Hedl, although he didn't play on Tuesday, is back, and now Wheeler's back. Maybe they're like Kramer and they swim in the East River. Maybe that's what they have to do with Fox, is have him go swim in the East River.
Not just Adam Fox, but also Ryan Lindgren. Like, I know he came back after that Reinhardt hit, but you can't tell me that when he wakes up tomorrow, he's not going to really feel that hit.
I just assume that's him every day. When is that guy healthy? He's always injured, and he always plays through it.
Okay, so a few things to pull out of this one. One, congratulations to the Florida Panthers. You kind of got the sense that there was a time there where the Panthers were probably feeling to themselves, and I'm sure the fans were right there with them, we're going to get Shesterkin again. I can't believe it. This is happening. Like, when Lafreniere tied it up, and by the way, what a great game again for Alexis Lafreniere, and that zone entry where he fired it off the crossbar, holy smokes. But when Lafreniere made it 2-2, I'm sure that in more than a couple of those Florida Panthers players' heads, and certainly the fans, they were thinking, it's going to happen again, isn't it? Did you 100%. Did you feel that way? Rangers again, they just tied it up. They're going to get one more. and we're going to get Shesterkin'd. I felt that way. Did you feel that way?
100%. How could you not? How could you absolutely not? And the thing I didn't like is I felt bad for Wheeler. I know that wasn't his bad play that led to the penalty.
It's a Banajed turnover.
Of all the guys I least wanted to see in the penalty box at the end of that game, it was Blake Wheeler. Just an unbelievable effort by him, but should have been a penalty shot.
I was going to say, it was either sit down in the penalty box or stand off to the side and watch Barkov go to the dot.
I'd rather bet on Shesterkin. In that situation, if I was the Rangers and I could pick, I would have taken the penalty shot.
You would have taken Florida, taken the penalty shot?
I would have taken.
Do you know?
I would have taken Shesterkin against any Panther skater.
Do you know how great Barkov is at the penalty shot?
I would have taken Shesterkin against any Panther.
That to me would have, that to me would have, Pavel Bure was a Florida Panther. That to me would have been an insane moment.
Yeah.
That's you got Barkov and you have Shesterkin. It's overtime at the dot. Barkov, who has about a bajillion shootout moves. Like, how many times have you talked to various coaches? And listen, Barkov's had more than a few with the Florida Panthers and talked about what he does and how he practices shootouts in practice and all the moves that just like all the guys' heads are spinning.
This is all real nice.
He's got a million moves.
I don't care. I'm taking Shesterkin against any Panther.
Yeah.
Today, during the past, in their prime, or in the future. Any future Panther we don't even know about, I was taking Shesterkin in that moment against them. He was the guy. And if the Rangers were allowed a choice and I was in charge, I would be like, we'll take the penalty shot.
Wow. That would have been something. Nonetheless.
And Barkov, your international man of skill, he set up the game-winning goal.
He really did. It was, that was a gorgeous play and a great finish by Sam Reinhart as well. When they started whistling it around, I think it was the second power play for the Rangers when they really started whistling the puck around and chance after chance after chance after chance. Like, that thing looked like Globetrotters, but then in overtime, that Florida power play looked like Globetrotters too.
The Rangers had a couple of in the earlier in the game where their power play, which had been non-existent, asleep, finally woke up and they moved the puck around like the Globetrotters do.
They did.
They had some great power plays in this game.
But that last one was just touch, goal.
Yeah.
Touch, goal. It was a beautiful thing. Anything else you want to say about this game before we move on? And again, by the way, another great one in this hopefully 7-game series between these two.
I did laugh at the end of regulation when Trouba tried to get a call for getting punched in the head.
Yeah,
I was like, there is no way, young Jacob, that you are getting that call. No way.
I think we all had a laugh at that. Yeah.
Great series. Great hockey.
Wrong guy to try to lobby for that. It was awesome. Again, another great game between these two teams. I don't even want best of 7. I want best of 11. Give me best of 11 in this series.
Do you remember when the WHL used to do best of 9?
It's the best, right? Just think about how crazy that was.
And the Ontario Hockey League used to have 8-point series, so you could tie.
Yeah.
You'd be tied at 2 games apiece, and then there'd be a tie. So both teams would have 5 points.
It was
crazy stuff.
It was in an era where, and we look back on it now, we say, holy smokes, what were they thinking? I guess it kind of sounds cool. It was in the era where you could have a series like that, Elliotte, and they also had 15-round prize fights.
Oh, yeah.
Remember watching 15-rounders, Elliotte, when we were kids? You look back on it now, you let these guys pound each other in the head for 15 rounds? Holy smokes, what are you people thinking? Anyhow.
By the way, did you have any doubt that was a penalty shot? Did you think it was?
I thought penalty shot right away, and I thought, I was like, okay, let's see if he has the guts to, no, he's not going to do it. I was waiting for the point. Oh, by the way,
do you remember the last penalty shot you saw in overtime of a playoff game?
Oh, not off the top of my head.
You know what last I remember? Joey Juneau on Ken Reggett.
Holy smokes. So was that Boston, Pittsburgh?
No, it was
Philadelphia?
Washington, Pittsburgh.
Just an opinion question.
And Reggett stopped him. It was incredible.
Reggett, who made, for my money, maybe the best save I've ever seen on Gino Cavallini in that St. Louis Toronto Maple Leaf series so many years ago.
I love Ken Reggett. That save was a little bit overrated.
No, I will not hear this. I will not hear this about Ken Reggett at all. That is one of maybe the best save of all time. Thank you very much. Let me ask you an opinion question. And I'm curious people listening to this podcast to weigh in too.
I may be a bit biased against that Reggett save because when I was in university, I had a crush on the Cavallini's niece who was in school with me at the time.
Did she give you the time of day? Did she even look
very nice girl? A very nice girl. She was dating another NHL player at the time. So I knew I had no chance. But she was a great person, like good looking and nice. So I may be biased in favor of that too.
You didn't like slide up to her and say, I'm a Western Mustangs sideline reporter for football.
I got to tell you, I don't think that was going to work.
Opinion time. Let me close on this one. I'm in favor. I always like the look of the X over the head for the penalty shot. Now in the NHL, it's of course, and it's been this way for a long time, the point to center ice. Yeah. Which one do you like better? I've always liked the X over the head. What do you like?
They still do that. I like the point to center ice.
You do,
love the point. Oh yeah, I love it. Maybe just because I'm used to it.
I just love the X. I don't know. Okay, just opinion time. Anyhow,
by the way, what did you hear happened at the Memorial Cup the other day?
Oh, jeez. Okay. By the way, everybody that I've texted about this one, everybody in Saginaw has swollen fingers. I hope that this case of swollen fingers that everybody has. Well, that's what I'm thinking because
they don't want to be the one to confirm it to you.
Exactly. Everybody that I texted about this, all of a sudden, like, oh, my fingers are too swollen. I can't use my iPhone. Oh, I don't know what it is. Well, when the swelling goes down in your fingers, everybody that I texted, please get back to me. But it sounds like, and nobody would confirm this with me, that the London Knights bus was parked in front of the Saginaw Spirit entrance and may or may not have been blocking it. So I think a number of the Saginaw people parked their cars all around the bus to trap it. Like this is, and then there was, various, parking lot insults that were hurled back and forth between London and Saginaw. Again, that is the rumor. That's what I was told. And I think the fact that all of a sudden everyone has really, really chubby digits and can't use their phones to confirm a story probably means that it's true, Elliotte.
Even if it's not true, I am wishing it into existence.
I want
a story that good has to be true.
I really, really want it to be true. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's move on.
Game 5, Thursday.
Yep, that's right. Game 5 is on Thursday. All the action gets underway. Puck drops just after 8 o'clock Eastern. The venue shifts back to MSG. Sorry about the ice palm race. Okay, Elliotte, news segment now. News on the march. Don Waddell, now officially president of hockey operations and general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Later on today, he will speak, so we'll get more of a thorough understanding of everything involving these various positions that he has and what he has planned, etc. So we'll stay tuned for that, and we'll talk more on the next podcast about it. But do you have a quick thought on this one now that it's official?
I think Carolina has already begun interviews to replace him.
Okay.
And I think there's been a lot of questions asked about what comes next in Columbus. Who's he going to hire? What's the full structure going to look like? I assume we're going to get some answers on Wednesday afternoon when he meets with the media and outlines things. But I think this is going to be a very interesting month with the Blue Jackets, just in terms of how many people are staying, what the structure is going to be, what are his plans for the team. One of the things I think that was discussed here is that, Columbus has very loyal fans. They showed that this year, and I think the organization really wants to reward them. But one of the things I believe he will try to sell them on is there still doesn't mean you can make quick fixes. They've got good young players there. They really believe they have some foundational pieces that can help them get to where they want to go. but I don't think he really believes that you can accelerate this through free agency too much or make shortcut moves that are supposed to help you win in the short term. And the one thing that the Blue Jackets are really lucky about is that their fans are good enough and loyal enough that they probably will accept it, but it's hard to hear still when you've been waiting so long to be successful. Like, I don't think Waddell's walking in here saying, we're going to win next year. I think he's going to walk in and say, we've got pieces, but I know what it's like to have a really good team and how hard it is to win, and we're not anywhere near there yet.
All right. Again, a little bit later on today, we'll hear Waddell speak, and we'll be talking plenty about the future of the Columbus Blue Jackets as they have a new boss and maybe more on the horizon. Meantime, new bench boss official in Seattle. Tuesday afternoon, the Seattle Kraken announcing Dan Bylsma is the next head coach of the Seattle Kraken. He still has business with Coachella Valley. They're in a playoff series right now with Milwaukee in the Western Conference Final of the American Hockey League. There's the Jessica Campbell question that's out there as well. I want to ask you about that. But a thought on Dan Bylsma, now made official by Seattle.
I would think that there are a certain amount of people who thought that this was not a name we'd hear in NHL head coaching circles again. Aside from Seattle, in the last 7 years since he left for Buffalo, I don't think Bylsma had a ton of bites, like maybe only one or two interviews. And I would wonder if he too would look at it and say, I don't know if I ever would have got another shot. And we talked about this briefly on your show, Jeff, about how I had a debate once with a coach. Is it better to be an NHL assistant or an AHL head coach? Well, Bylsma was an NHL assistant after his last coaching job in Buffalo, but the AHL coach getting into an organization, doing a good job with their prospects, especially the prospect when it comes to the Seattle Kraken, Shane Wright, I would have to say he wrote a definitive argument as to why AHL coach is better. I don't think this was an easy process for the Kraken. I think there were people there who didn't want to make a coaching change in the first place. I think there were some legitimate disagreements. And when I say legitimate disagreements, it's because I think it's fair for people to have different opinions. But I think there were some legitimate disagreements on where the Kraken should go. I think there were some people who really favored Bylsma. I think there were some people who liked Todd McClellan. I think there were some people who really liked Jay Leach, the assistant coach there, who got 2 interviews. And I heard that Dean Evison interviewed very well, although I don't know if he was going to beat out one of the other 3. But I heard it was not, again, I don't want to say it wasn't unanimous, because at the end it might have been. I really have no idea. But I think that there were people who were like, no, I feel strongly about this person, and others who were like, no, I feel strongly about this person. And the people who really like Bylsma because of the job he did in the American Hockey League team, they won out. And I've said this with you before, that to me, this whole situation shows how strongly the Kraken organization feels that it must start to contend. And that 2 years ago, they have a great first round upset of the defending Stanley Cup champions. And this year, they didn't make the playoffs. And the word is out, both internally and externally, that that's not good enough anymore. That the expectation is the Kraken are expected to contend or be a playoff team. Now, the coach alone isn't going to fix that. They need some scoring, and I have no doubt they are going to go out and look for some scoring. I've mentioned Jake DeBrusk on this pod, and I know there's going to be others. But, when I think of Bylsma here, I think of, Jeff, and it's not a hockey coach.
Who do you think of?
It's Ron Lancaster.
Wow, CFL poll. Okay, yes. I'm listening.
The CFL Hall of Famer, a great quarterback, one of the best players in CFL history. So he retires as a member of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and he goes into coaching. And I think in his first 2 years, he went 4-28. And it was like, okay, good player, terrible coach, never going to come back. Mm-hmm. And he went to the broadcast booth for, I think, close to a decade. And then he came back, and he was a great coach. And so, I always think that just because it didn't work for you before and maybe your name wasn't on the front burner of a lot of lists, it doesn't mean you can't figure it out and be successful later. I call that my Lancaster rule. But it was definitely a situation where Seattle knew Bylsma better than anybody else did. And the job he did in Coachella Valley and continues to do in Coachella Valley, because they're in an AHL conference final, it convinced them to give him another shot. And that's why coaching in the AHL can be a very good thing.
Familiarity with Shane Wright, as you already mentioned, Ryan Winterton, Riker Evans, like these are the ones. Like I'm with you. I think they go out. I think Ron Francis does, and I think he's frisky in a free agency, and we start to see some new faces with the Seattle Kraken. But make no mistake about it, a lot of this is because of the work that he's done with a lot of these young players that are looking to transition into the big club. Now, the other name that's out there is an assistant with Coachella Valley. And Dan Bylsma said that, she would be considered for an assistant position with the Seattle Kraken. I would imagine she would be considered as well as the head coach position with Coachella Valley Firebirds, and that is Jessica Campbell.
Yep.
Do you have a sense of how this one plays itself out?
From what I understand, the comments at the media conference were not simple lip service. I heard that when Bylsma was interviewed, and I assume he was interviewed more than once, he mentioned that he would be interested in bringing her to the NHL team. So I think this is real. So to me, the question is, A, what do they think is right for her? And what does she think is right for her? So between those things, like to me, it's obvious she has a future in the organization. I just wonder what everybody thinks, including herself, the best path is. Like we just had a conversation about how is it better to be an NHL assistant or an AHL head coach? And for Bylsma in Seattle, the answer was AHL head coach. What does she think? I think that's going to be a question. I've also heard that Bylsma's interested in Todd Reardon, and they have a history together. So I'm not surprised to hear that. But I like I said, I don't believe this is lip service. I heard it came up as part of the interview process that he would be interested in bringing her to Seattle with him.
Sticking with coaching, Tuesday we were introduced to Sheldon Keefe officially with the New Jersey Devils. I had him on the radio show a couple of hours after he finished his press conference.
Yeah, what did he say? Did he say he missed you already?
Yeah, he missed both of us. He really misses being that close to 32 Thoughts. The one thing that struck me from my conversation with him is how much more relaxed and invigorated he already sounds. We all know that Toronto's a meat grinder. We know what Toronto is. We know what Toronto is like. Elliotte, how many either players or coaches have gone through Toronto and they start by saying, "Don't worry, I know what it's going to be like," and then by the end they say, "I had no idea it was going to be like that." And Keefe has come out of it essentially sounding like he has new energy. And like it's pretty impressive too, because it's only like 5 minutes ago that he got fired from the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I thought that was pretty interesting. One of the things that I tried to get him to bite on, and he wouldn't. Which
clearly failed, judging from the way you're talking about this.
It totally failed. I said, "Listen, were there ever any moments when you were with Toronto and you said to either Dubas or Tree Living, I'd really like it if we could get, player X or player Y from the New Jersey Devils, and who would those players be?" And he didn't.
Jack Hughes
didn't even. Yeah, exactly. Dougie Hamilton. Jesper Bratt. I want them all. Did not even come close to answering that one. Was keeping that one very much at arm's length. But my main takeaway was just how he sounded more than anything else for each.
I'm sure that one of the reasons you're relaxed is because the first time you get fired at the NHL level, you think that oh my God, I'm done. It's never going to happen again. And, he told the story in the media conference about how he got let go and he's out for lunch with his wife, and Tree Living calls him to say the Devils have received permission to talk to you. That is uplifting, because you go from feeling like the lowest of the low, the biggest piece of crap in the world, to like, oh yeah,
Devils,
people still love me. It's like when you get dumped for the first time and then the next person calls and asks you out. You're like, oh, like I thought that I'd be single for the rest of my existence. I was going to live like a hermit with a bunch of cats. No, there's other people out there who find you attractive. So I have no doubt that really helps. And the thing about it all is, and one of the things I'm really curious about for the Devils is, I understand that a lot of the people that interviewed there, and I mean the ones who interviewed seriously, I think they did a couple of really cursory interviews, but some of the people interviewed seriously, I think there was a lot of talk about, okay, what are you looking at your blue line, and how are we going to deal with our issues in goal? And very clearly, I don't think Sheldon Keefe or anybody else takes this job unless they are convinced the Devils have a plan to fix those issues. So, Keefe, your question should have been, which goalie is Tom Fitzgerald going to get? Like, you are a terrible interviewer for not asking this question.
Hold on. So part of the conversation was, we started talking about roster composition, and he mentioned Jake Allen and mentioned that it was a great acquisition by Tom Fitzgerald to shore up the goaltending position. And he said something along the lines of, and the pursuit of a goaltender continues for us.
Yes.
So that will continue. That is still the target.
But you didn't get a name.
No, Elliotte, I did not get a name.
C-.
No, I think strong B.
No,
strong,
C-. But don't worry, Guelph, that still makes you an honor student.
You had to take a shot at goo out of that one. Okay, fine. Elliotte, something else here about Sheldon Keefe, and this is from Kevin McGran's piece in the Toronto Star. This is what Sheldon Keefe had to say. Quote, "It was a tremendous honor to coach the Maple Leafs. There's a lot that goes into that. I've had a number of well-established coaches in the league reach out to say that I should be happy now that I get to coach in the real NHL. Toronto is quite unique. It's not like the rest of the league." Let me say that again. I had a number of well-established coaches in the league reach out to say I should be happy now that I get to coach in the real NHL. Toronto is quite unique. It's not like the rest of the league. Your thoughts on that one?
Well, I have no problem with the second of that quote. Toronto is unique. I think you could argue that Montreal is pretty crazy and Vancouver is pretty crazy. Like, there are other pretty crazy markets in the league. But I'm not crazy about that part about welcome to the real NHL. And the reason is, I wouldn't want someone coaching my team who really thought that. And the reason is, yes, I know that Toronto can be crazy and it's not easy. Same with Montreal, same with Vancouver, same with most of Canada. You name your place. But I look at it as the risks are high, yes, but the rewards are high. And I have always thought that is the way you should think. Now, look, I understand it that sometimes people go through that meat grinder and then they say, I need something quieter. I also understand that people want their families to go through something quieter. But to me, it would be like, give me that again. Like, the day I get fired from Sportsnet, and we all know that could happen on a moment's notice.
What time is it?
I would want the next craziest thing. Like, I remember when I got hired at Hockey Night in Canada, I was not used to some of the attention. And it really wasn't social media then. It was 03, 04. But I got criticized a lot more. Like there were TV columns at the time, and I got criticized for some things I did. Like it was fair criticism. I remember one was particularly harsh, but it was generally very fair criticism. But it was a lot more than what I was used to than when I worked at the Score. And I remember I was bothered by something once, and it was John Shannon. I was talking about it with John Shannon, and he said to me, look, you're on the number one show now. This is life. This is life. This is the way it is. What you say gets picked apart more. What you do gets picked apart more. But, there's a lot of good things that come with that too. And I always tell that to people. And now in the social media era, it's even crazier. But I don't know. Something about that quote bothered me, that if I was hiring someone who thought that, like it wouldn't matter to me if you were in the biggest market in the NHL or you were in the number 32 size market in the NHL.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want that. I wouldn't want that person working for me. I want someone who's like, did you ever watch Gladiator?
Yeah, I love Gladiator.
Like, I love Gladiator. I watch Gladiator at least once a year.
Oh,
it's
wow.
on my list of movies I have to watch at least once a year, with Godfather 1 and 2, with The Deer Hunter, and with another classic in that genre of movie, Roadhouse. Have to watch that at least once a year. But that scene when Russell Crowe is in the arena for the first time, once he returns to Rome, and he pulls everybody around him and says, this is how we're going to survive, basically. Like, that's the guy I'd want coaching my team, whether we were in the biggest market of the league or the number 32 market in the league. Someone who's going to say, the risks are high, but the rewards are even greater. If we pull this off together, me and the team I'm with, it's like, what did Fred Shiro say to the Flyers? We will walk together forever, and let me add, in glory. So I just didn't like that. I didn't like that. I was like, that's not what I'd want. That's not what I'd want.
The thing about it, whenever I hear things like this, part of me always says, if I'm the NHL, I want 32 markets that are as crazy about their hockey team as Toronto is.
You know what? That's a great point too. Fantastic.
Like, that is what the goal is here, everybody. We want everything to be as financially healthy as Toronto is, and we want the same 24/7 obsession about a hockey team that Toronto has. I mean, fill your boots with all the 67 jokes and all that, and that's all cool. I'm just talking about the business of the game. If you're the NHL and you read something like this, you say to yourself, you do understand that we want 32 markets like this.
Yeah.
We don't want one and everybody else. We want everybody to be like this. And that obsession comes along with that tightrope act where, like to your point about, hey, I can say something on the Score, I'll say the same thing on Hockey Night in Canada, and it's going to get picked up and picked up and picked apart. But that's what you want. That's part of that high wire act. You're up there. And they want all their markets to be like that. Like, that's the goal. That's the goal. Ask any organization. Like, we're talking a lot about Columbus these days and what they're doing. You don't think they want that? Like, pick a market. Pick a market. Every market wants that. That's the only part of that I looked at and kind of went, you're not getting it. Because the goal is to get 32 markets like that. Anyhow.
That's a good way of looking at it too. A really good way of looking at it too. By the way, I was talking about this with someone today, and they said, when it comes to your work, do you have any rules for your wife? And my answer was, number one, if you looked at her and you looked at me, you would know that she's the one who's got rules and I don't bother her with anything. But the one thing I did say is that the only thing I ever say to her is, if you can't handle people ripping me, then don't go on social media. Like I say, I don't want you comment. Like, as you know, I appear in some of her videos for her Serve It Up Steph stuff.
Yep.
But other than that, I'm like, no commenting on anything anyone says about me. no wading into any fights about me or anything like that.
No pouring gasoline.
No pouring gasoline on the fire. And I know it's hard for some of the partners out there. Like I get it. They read things and they hear things and they take it more personally than we do. But that's the only thing I say. It says you are not to go out there and be an arsonist.
I think that's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of more things. Vancouver Canucks. This one kind of a surprise. Mike Yeo parting ways with the Vancouver Canucks, assistant coach with Rick Tocchet. This one caught me. Did it catch you?
A little bit, because I think that I was under the impression he did a really good job for them last year. Like, he was in charge of the penalty kill, right? And their penalty kill was pretty good. Now, there were some reports. I think Sat Shaw had one of the reports that he turned down a contract offer. So I sit back and I wait, because usually when that happens, it's because there's something else he's looking at. So I want to see how it all plays out. I wonder if there's another coach out there that has a connection with Mike Yeo and wants him, or Yeo sees another situation out there he wants to take a look at. But I don't know that for sure. I would just say, in my experience, that's the case. Some other assistant coaching stuff out there. I heard there were a bunch of teams that looked at Newell Brown, who was let go by Anaheim, and next year would be his 28th consecutive year in the league. And there seems to be some talk that he may end up in Los Angeles. So it'll be a short drive from where he was last year. Some of the names I've heard that have been kind of connected a bit to Toronto have been Brad Lauer, who was let go, or I guess they said mutually left Winnipeg. And I heard Lane Lambert's name out there too. We'll see what they decide to do. Toronto, knowing them, they're casting a wide net. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Vancouver was there sure does seem to be in the middle of everything that they're trying to do. And I think they've got a lot of balls in the hopper. And I think they're trying to really figure out exactly what's going to happen here and what they're going to be able to do and what they're going to have to do to be able to do it. But there seems to be some real optimism that they're going to be able to work out something with Tyler Myers. I think he likes it there, and I think they want to keep him. And that usually means there is a way to get it done. We will see.
One other thing, Elliotte, and this is a Vegas story. Jonathan Marchessault. This is from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, David Shane's piece about how essentially Jonathan Marchessault is kind of Maytag repairman here, just waiting for a call from the Vegas Golden Knights. His quotes are, and this was from the opening of the World Series of Poker, I did not have a call yet or anything. They said they were interested to definitely re-sign me, and we'll see. Technically, they have time until June 30th, so we'll see how it goes. That from Jonathan Marchessault, their leading scorer.
So here's my reaction to this story. And I, as somebody who has gone through challenging negotiations myself, I understand what happens here. The player wants it to be fast. The team says, we've got time. I bet you there's a lot of people listening to this who negotiate contracts who understand this dynamic. You have someone who says, lots of time before we have to make our decision. The Lamorello rule, if you have time, use it. And someone who says, you know what? I really want this to be over with. I want it to be done. And while they might want that, the other side either can't or doesn't. So I think the Vegas Golden Knights look at this and say, hey, it's May 28th. Free agency isn't until July 1st. We have time. We're going to sort it out, or at least figure out exactly what we can offer you and go from there. But we still have a month. But the player who's been waiting all year, and it's his future, like the Golden Knights aren't moving out of this. They're still going to be there. he's a bit more on edge. He wants to know. His family probably wants to know. He wants to know. And it also does become, even though the organizations don't like hearing it being painted this way, in the players' eyes, it becomes something about respect. Like, come deal with me. And I know I've said this before in this pod, and I've had GMs call me and say, it's not disrespect. It's not disrespect. And I say, well, in the players' eyes, it is, because the team looks at it like we still have time. And that's exactly what this is. It's, Kelly McCrimmon came out and said, we want to keep this player. Kelly McCrimmon's looking at the calendar and saying, I have time. Jonathan Marchessault is sitting there and he's like, I want this to be over. I want to know that I'm going to be a Golden Knight or not. I don't like the uncertainty, and I don't want it for another month. And to me, it doesn't mean, based on the article today, which is all fair, like a really good article, it doesn't mean there's any more or less of a chance to me that the Golden Knights will sign Marchessault. It's the Golden Knights saying, we have to work through a process and figure out exactly what we've got. And the players saying, I just want this freaking over with. That's what this is.
The only real leverage you have in any negotiation, Elliotte, is the ability to walk away.
Yeah.
And if you have the ability to walk away, you have leverage. If you don't, then you don't have leverage. If I was Jonathan Marchessault in this situation, and I'm sure that, through his agent, Pat Brisson, they're, discussing contingencies here and what the marketplace could look like for Jonathan Marchessault. I just wonder, if this is the level of frustration now with Marchessault, how long does he let it go before he makes his mind up and says, you know what? That was your timeline, not mine.
Well, the only thing I would say is, I think he really wants to stay and be part of the team.
I believe that too. But then to your point about respect, there comes a point where it's like, okay, that I want to stay here. I've been here from day one. I don't think I should be treated like this.
Yeah, he might feel that way. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know.
I'm just putting myself in the position.
Yeah.
There would be part. I think it would only be natural. Look, I've been here from day one. I helped you win a Stanley Cup. All of it.
If you're the Golden Knights, you have to be aware of that. You have to think of that. And I wonder if they reach out and just say, hey, we've got some things we've got to do here.
Yeah.
But from what I understand about him and how much he wants to be there, I don't see that happening yet. Now, hey, if we get to June 20th or June 25th, then you just have to get that in your head. A month away, I don't know. You'd have to be really mad.
I'm not him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just wondering what it must be like to be him right now.
I've been in his situation before. Like I said, you're thinking, let's get this over with. It takes two to tango.
Okay, Elliotte, definitely. We'll keep our eyes on this one. It's Vegas. It's Marchessault. It's one of the originals, the OGs, the misfits. We'll see where this one heads. All right, Elliotte, San Jose Sharks. Will Smith comes out. No, he's not going back to BC. Really good video. Signs his entry-level contract there. Not going back to play with his buddies. He has turned pro. Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, and I think we're all starting to wonder here now, what else does Mike Grier do? And now that he's going to have Celebrini, and now that he's going to have Will Smith as well, you wonder what the San Jose Sharks will be doing in the offseason.
I'm sure he'll be looking for some good pros to play with those guys, some players to protect them. And obviously the biggest one is going to be the coach. Who does he hire to start molding these players into legit NHLers? I said in the last pod, I believed it was some combination of Blashill, Warsofsky, and Marco Sturm were in the running for this job. And we'll see what the Sharks' timeline is going to be. But I also think you've got to be looking at what players are you putting around them. It's exciting for the Sharks to be able to start anew with two players who they hope are going to be franchise cornerstones. And
So are you saying the Celebrini and Smith here are Thornton and Marlowe?
I'm not saying. I just think it's very bad for both of them to say that. I think the Sharks would be very, very happy.
Of course,
if those guys turned out like Thornton and Marlowe, but it's almost like dooming them at the beginning to put that on top of them. That's very good though, Marek. That'll excite the Shark fans. Very good.
That's right. You're getting Thornton and Marlowe, folks. Take it to the bank. Long-term deposit, result guaranteed. Let me throw a name at you here as you're talking about providing a security blanket for these young players. Tanner Jeannot fit there.
You're going to have him traded to every team.
Any team that needs toughness, Tanner Jeannot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that guy could play just about everywhere.
He really did excel in the Western Conference, Elliotte.
Yes, he did.
He really liked playing in the Western Conference. That's not exactly a secret. Okay, someone else who's always been great to deal with, and you're in Edmonton, Sam Gagner. What's up there?
Yeah, so I saw him today in the room and just asked him how he was doing. He came off the ice. He had a big smile. He was working up a sweat.
Sam Gagner.
He told me he wants to play again next year. And yeah, he does not want to retire. He wants to play, and he is determined to play. And Gagner will be 35 in August, and if you take a look at his game total, he's up over 1,000. Like some guys, when they get to 1,000, they're like, okay, I hit that number and I'm good. He's not like that. He wants to play. He says, look, I still love it. He played 28 games this year with the Oilers, who played 15 in Bakersfield. And he said, look, I still love hockey. He said his wife is still understanding. If you want to keep going, then you can keep going. He's got 3 kids, 8, 6, and 4. I believe it's 2 boys and a girl. And they're starting to get old enough a little bit to A, play, and B, have a better understanding of what their dad does. But the thing that really hit me, Jeff, is he comes off the ice. He's got a big smile. Chances are he's not getting in the lineup, but he's still going out there every day, and you can tell he really enjoys it. But, I said I would mention it, and he said he'd appreciate it. And so I'm just happy to mention that if there's a team out there looking for a vet,
awesome.
Sam Gagner wants to play next year.
He bypassed his father for games played in the NHL.
Yeah.
Right now, Sam Gagner is at 1,043 regular season games, and father Dave, man, could Dave ever shoot? Holy smokes,
he was also kind of dirty. Dave was kind of a dirty player.
He kind of did play in the 90s, Elliotte. You kind of had to if you're going to get through the neutral zone. He played 946 games. It is a much different league now, different league.
Can I tell you a quick story about Dave Gagner?
Of course, I'll always hear that.
So he was represented by Don Bazley, and so was Saku Koivu.
Mm-hmm.
And before Koivu came over to North America, they faced each other at a World Championships. Koivu for Finland and Gagner for Canada. And, Gagner had heard about this guy, and he's like, they lined up for a face-off, and he goes, let's see what this guy's made of. And he said he jammed him with his stick, and Koivu jammed him right back.
Oh.
And Don Bazley told me that, and when I was doing a piece on Koivu once, Don Bazley told me that he remembered after that tournament was over, Dave Gagner called him and said, okay, I decided to test your guy Koivu a little bit with some chicanery in during face-offs and stuff, and he said that Koivu did not back down. And Bazley kind of smiled and said, Dave is. When Dave says he did something to Saku, I just assume it wasn't clean, because Dave was very good at that. So I always like that story about Dave.
Dave certainly could be nasty. Okay. You're listening to this podcast. I'm guessing it's Wednesday. So tonight, Game 5, PWHL, Songa Center in Lowell, Massachusetts. After a thrilling double overtime on Sunday, Minnesota versus Boston. The winner becomes the first PWHL champion and captures the Walter Cup. This after the controversy on Sunday, where Taylor Heisey slammed into Aaron Frankel. Sophie Jake scored. It was overturned after the big celebration on the ice. Goaltender interference. Alina Mueller for Boston comes down a couple of minutes later and fires one high on Nicole Hensley to give Boston the 1-0 victory and force a game 5. So Minnesota goes from jubilation and helmets and sticks and gloves all over the ice. So pick yourselves up and try to win this thing, again. We've got a game 5 in the PWHL tonight, Elliotte.
So I think a lot of people would consider that kind of a nightmare situation.
No way.
I actually think it's the right thing. That's why you have replay. If your championship is decided, like, am I wrong? That was clear goaltender interference, right?
Completely goal interference. Like Heisey
now it was an accident.
She lost an edge and she slid right into Erin Frankel. Erin Frankel couldn't make the save, so Sophie Jakes comes in to score, but Erin Frankel was frozen. She could not make a save. She could not get in position to make that save. It was 100% the right call.
So that's why, and I know there's a lot of debate about replay and the unintended consequences, and there have been a few of them in the NHL, but that is why you have it. If the championship had been awarded on that goal, people would be screaming bloody murder.
Mm-hmm.
So it sucks for Minnesota. It sucks for Minnesota's fans. But if it happened to them, they would have felt totally cheated and been screaming for replay. So I know some people who thought that was a nightmare scenario. I'm with you. I disagree. The nightmare scenario was if it would have been allowed to count.
Listen, I think most, if not everybody, understood that. Ken Klee, the head coach of Minnesota, how many games has he been involved in? He knows goalie interference when he sees it. It's the right call. But the thing that I liked about it for this league is it now becomes a part of the story. It now becomes part of the drama that has been this season, and it leads into a game 5. Like, it's part of that finish to that game goes into the hype machine for game 5 here. Like, you know me, Elliotte, I look at everything like it's one big story. Like, every hockey season is one big story, and this one just took another twist and had another turn in the first season for the PWHL. Like, it's something that everybody is always going to talk about. What happened in that first playoff? Well, Minnesota thought they won. Everybody was saying, wow, a championship at XL Energy Center, finally here, and it's PWHL Minnesota. Not so fast. Not so fast. I thought it was A, the right call, and B, although not great for the athletes or the fans there, the Minnesota fans, a nice bit of marketing for the league itself, because
that sure went viral. Everybody saw it.
Everybody talking. It got and the PWHL have done a great job creating viral moments all season long, whether it's jailbreak or whatever. They've done a great job of that. And this is another chapter in that story. So we'll see what happens tonight, but it will either be Minnesota or Boston who captures the inaugural Walter Cup. Montana's Thought Line coming up in moments. Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. We have a thought line for your thoughts. It is the Montana's Thought Line, Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue. Thank you, Rick Turner. 32 Thoughts at sportsnet.ca, 1-833-311-3232. Griffin Porter, thank you again for curating these thoughts lovingly. This, Elliotte, from Chase. Hey, fellas, Chase here, lifelong Las Vegas hockey fan here. First, with the Las Vegas Wranglers of the ECHL, then to the obvious one, go Knights go. With Ryan McDonough waiving his no-move clause, I was curious. When a player waives, is it in a contract of some sort that they're waiving it for a specific team, or is it just a mutual understanding that they are waiving to go to said team? Curious if the deal would ever fall through, they could be traded to a different team since the no movement clause was waived. Love the pod. If ever in Vegas, Big B's Barbecue is a must try. Elliotte appreciates the recommendations.
I always do. So the way it works is a player, when they get traded, they have to sign a piece of paper to file with Central Registry that they are waiving their no-trade clause. So basically, in advance, you don't put anything on paper, at least in most cases, but you say, if you trade me to this place or that place, I will agree to go. So a team will say, can you give us 3 teams? Can you give us 5 teams? Like, where would you be willing to go? You know, when Ryan Kessler was traded from Vancouver to Anaheim, he was only willing to give 1 team. Some players also refuse it. They say, no, I'm sorry. I have this right. I'm not doing it. Some players will be in such a bad place, they'll say, just trade me anywhere. I won't care and I'll sign it. But to protect against it going sideways or people saying, you told me that or you didn't tell me this, what happens is when you go to a player and say, look, we have a deal, you can go here, then the player signs a piece of paper that says, I have agreed to waive my no trade clause or my no move clause so this can happen. And that's what occurs. That's how it works. Now, one of the things that's different about the new CBA as opposed to previous ones was that in previous cases, if you agreed to waive your no move or no trade clause, you couldn't get it back. Now,
teams could. No, teams could. Like, you could ask for it, and some teams could give it back to you.
You're right. That happened to
you're right. PK Subban in Nashville,
PK Subban was one of the big ones.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
That was one of the big ones. You could ask, but you weren't guaranteed it. And now it's changed. So if Jeff is traded in year 2 of an 8-year deal and he agrees to waive his no trade or no move, after he agrees to this particular trade, it's back on, and they have to get him to agree to waive it if they ever want to do it again. So that is a change.
Excellent. Chase, thanks for that one, and thanks for the recommendation. Tim in New York. I'm watching the Dallas Stars the other night and got to thinking about Logan Stankoven. He could potentially... Stank, great nickname.
You know what I heard? I heard that Peter DeBoer would not call him Stank. The other players call him Stank, but DeBoer was not. A couple of the players told me that DeBoer was not comfortable calling him Stank.
Calling him Stank? Yeah. But will he call other guys by their nicknames?
Well, it's a disgusting nickname.
Of course it is. I know, but like hockey, dude.
I mean, I'm glad the kid likes it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be crazy about it if my nickname was Stink.
Man, I don't know. I'm playing in the NHL. Call me whatever you want. He could potentially get his name engraved on the Stanley Cup this year. He could also be eligible to win the Calder Trophy next year.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the most Marek-esque question to hit the thought line, which I don't think is the most Marek-esque. There's been plenty of other ones more. But has a player ever won the Stanley Cup before they won the Calder Trophy? I would root for the Stars just for the possibility of that happening. And I say that as a Rangers fan. Special shout out to Mustang Harry's in New York City, the best bar for playoff Ranger games. On 30th and 7th, right near MSG. Okay, Elliotte, who is this mystery man who won the Stanley Cup and then the Calder?
The mystery man is Ken Dryden. Ken Dryden played 6 games for the Montreal Canadiens in 1970-71. And in the first round, the Canadiens were not very good that year. He was named the starter as the Canadiens faced the defending Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins. And the Canadiens beat the Bruins and won the Stanley Cup that year. And actually the Bruins won again the next year, so he stopped them from winning 3 in a row. And then in 1972, now the full-time starting goaltender of the Canadiens, in a year where he had 8 shutouts, Dryden won the Calder Trophy. So I don't know if it's ever happened with anyone else, Jeff, but that's definitely the most famous one.
And there's one other thing that I want to throw in there for a little bit of spice too. And good luck getting this one, Logan Stankoven, or Stank, as everyone except for Peter DeBoer calls him. Ken Dryden also won the Conn Smythe Trophy that playoff year in 1971.
Oh yes, that's right.
So
you're right. I should have mentioned that.
The Cup, the Conn Smythe before winning the Calder Trophy. When you talk
and
about
then won 5 Vezinas.
Yeah, I talk about having yourself a season. Holy
I would just quit.
Smokes.
I can't beat that. I quit.
I know. And you know what? Of all people, Ken Dryden would have been the guy to do that.
and just drop Mike, peace out. I'm going to go write books and then call the Miracle on Ice in 1980. Okay, there you go. That's a good one. And we'll finish up with Lori from Plymouth, Michigan. Hey guys, as a Red Wings fan, I've got plenty of free time. Ouch. Oh, Lori. And I've been thinking about the upcoming free agent market. I was wondering if players and agents put together highlight reels to market the player and show off their strengths to potential suitors. I know there are all kinds of stats, but some things are best demonstrated on video. Subtle stick positioning or perhaps specific plays or unique skills. I know teams have servers full of video and use it for scouting, teaching, etc., but do players also have the rights to this video? If they were to make their own marketing reel, would they have access to team video or broadcast video, or would they just have to procure it some other way? Just curious, and know you will have the answer. Hashtag from Lori in Plymouth, Michigan, pay Lucas Raymond. Don't worry, Lucas Raymond is getting paid.
He'll get paid.
Free agents making their own sizzle reels.
Boy, that's a great question. Well, one of the things I can tell you is last year, Patrick Kane, he sent out some video, and his agent, Pat Brisson, sent out some video of him working out, just so teams could see it. Now, that wasn't NHL video. That was him working out in Ontario at the time. So there's no problem with that, but it's an example of a sizzle reel that was sent out so teams could see this is what Patrick Kane looks like. And, obviously when it's put out by the agent, it's going to make the player look good, but it was still something. That's the first thing I actually thought of while Jeff was asking the question.
This happens at lower levels. Like there'll be players like minor hockey players, youth hockey players who send it out to various teams, whether it's junior teams, OHL, Western League, Quebec League, or USHL, just to sort of get on managers' radars. A lot of scouts will do that. Not so much at the pro level because the league is so well scouted and everyone has a handle on who the players are and what they're all about. But that it happens more, Lori, at a lot lower levels, at the minor/youth hockey level for upcoming drafts and not the top players because those will all be certainly known, but for 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th round, a lot of agents will do those sizzle video reels to submit to teams for their perusal and their understanding of all of these players. Anyway,
now when it comes to NHL sizzle reels, it's a really interesting question. You don't see a lot of players send out highlights of themselves. I know they do watch them. They'll watch them in a group or they'll watch each other's highlights in a group. Mm-hmm. But do you know many players who do sizzle reels?
No, only in like the minor/youth hockey levels, like 13, 14, 15 years old, just to get on the radar of certain teams. I got to send video out. I got a kid, he's not going to be in the first couple of rounds, but I want to make sure that this team in the USHL is aware of him, or this team in the Ontario League is aware of him, and they'll send those reels to get on the team's radar.
We see players do training, especially in summer. They'll put out videos of things they're working on. But I don't know too many players who send out sizzle reels of themselves. One thing I can tell you, one player did ask me this year through his agent for a playoff tease because the player was prominently featured. And I think someone in their family told them about it.
Yep.
Like Hockey Night in Canada's tease featured you tonight. And the agent reached out and said, can I get a copy of that? Which I sent to them. So I bet they do. I bet you there's a lot of pride about this stuff privately, but I don't know how many of them mention it publicly.
But one thing we should, Lori's really hit on something here. There is one thing we should mention as well. You know who does it, but not necessarily of the players? The teams for their cities. As a way to lure free agents. They'll put together reels about, here's what, if you want to live in Minnesota, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Vegas, wherever, they'll put together reels to send to players as a way to say, imagine yourself living here. Send it out to free agents.
But that's more about the city and stuff.
No. That's what I'm saying. It isn't about the players. This they will send out videos. This isn't addressing Lori's question, but as we're talking about, video and using it to recruit, teams will use videos of their cities. The Maple Leafs did that for Steven Stamkos.
Yeah, they did it for Tavares too.
They've done it for every team has done it. I think for a lot of players. Here's what it would be like.
You know
imagine
who the key player was who was featured in that Tavares video for him to play with?
No, who was?
Mitch Marner.
Oh, interesting. Hey.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting how that's all come full circle.
Yeah, no kidding. So it does happen at that level, teams using the city video to recruit, but great question and got some interesting answers out of it. Lori, thank you so much for that one. Thanks to everyone who submitted 32 thoughts at sportsnet.ca 1-833-311-3232. The Montana's Thought Line, Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue. We're talking Edmonton, Dallas, Game 4 next.
Jeff, Elliott, and Tom on 32 Thoughts. Try their ribs today. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back to 32 Thoughts, the podcast, presented as always by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Elliot, you are in Edmonton. You will see and cover Game 4 tonight. The Dallas Stars lead the series 2-1 after a pretty interesting game on Monday that saw the Edmonton Oilers storm out to a 2-0 lead, and they were on fire to start that game. Well, first of all, the crowd was on fire. What a great crowd that was on Monday in Edmonton.
Yes, it was.
Only to see 3 minutes and 3 minutes and 30 seconds in the second period just completely take the wind out of the sails. A pair of goals by Jason Robertson and one by Wyatt Johnson, and all of a sudden it's 3-2 Dallas. The game winner eventually scored by Jason Robertson, the hat trick, and a gorgeous goal where he banked it off Stuart Skinner, who, by the way, does get the start tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. Your thoughts on how we got to Game 4 with the Dallas Stars leading the series 2-1?
It's as if they stopped the game after the first period and said, okay, we're starting over. Like on road hockey, when you were a kid and one team had an 8-0 lead and then they yelled, new game. That Wyatt Johnston said it publicly on Tuesday at the media availability, but I'd heard after the game on Monday night, I asked a couple of the Stars, what was the most important thing that was said in the first intermission in your room? And the answer was win battles. They just felt they got completely overpowered in the first period of Game 3. And everything started with winning battles. And it was the veterans who said it, and then Peter DeBoer said it. We're not going to do anything if we don't start winning battles. And they did, and the Oilers fell apart. Now, as I said on Monday night in the aftermath, if Edmonton loses that series, they're going to regret Game 3. They're going to look back at the one that cost them the series. But when you're in the middle of it, and we've said it before, Jeff, there were times against Vancouver that the Oilers fans thought they were doomed, particularly after Game 5, and Edmonton found a way. Now, Dallas, I think, as I've said many times, is a different animal, but that's one of the things that the Oilers were talking about on Tuesday, the day off, is that, yeah, we lost, but today's a new day, tomorrow's a new game, and we have to have a short memory, learn our lessons, and move on. And, I really believe in the battles win stat, and Amber showed it to me. We get it as part of our statistical printout. And in the game, Dallas has won the Battles Won Cup all 3 games. All 3 games. And they certainly did it after the first period of Game 3. Now, one of the things I think is really interesting is the Stars have tried a tactic here that the Oilers players admit is working against them. And Kevin Bieksa did a great breakdown of it in the second intermission, and it's the 2-2 goal. And basically what they're doing is the moment a defenseman gets the puck deep in their zone, the weak side forward is blowing the zone. And on the 2-2 goal, it was Tyler Seguin, and Ekholm, knowing it was going to happen, went back to his own blue line, and basically it created a 50-50 puck battle that Seguin won, and it eventually led to the 2-2 goal. And a couple of Oilers players admitted to me that it was an effective tactic. It's working against them. So I asked a couple of them, what do you do? And they said that we have to start winning our own battles against them so that their defensemen don't get free to make that pass, flip it out, or the forward doesn't leave, or maybe they're going to have to change the way they attack and dump it in last. Like, we'll see how the Oilers adjust to that, but that is definitely a play that is working against the Oilers. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Jeff, and you discussed this on your radio show a bit on Tuesday, and I got some more information, was the game-winning goal against Stuart Skinner by Jason Robertson, his hat-trick goal.
Beautiful goal.
And in his post-game interview with Kyle, Robertson said that Jeff Reese, who's the goalie coach there, had helped him figure out what to do. And Peter DeBoer, in his comments on Tuesday, mentioned that Robertson and Matt Duchene are probably the two on the team who pay most attention to information given to them by Jeff Reese. And I had a chance to talk to the goalie coach, a real great guy, after the Stars skated on Tuesday. And he said it wasn't so much what Skinner did, it's how Robertson practices. And I thought this was really interesting. And I think this is a good lesson for young players. He said that Robertson is an excellent practice player. Excellent. And they'll do drills with their goalies, Ottinger and Scott Wedgwood. And the idea is Robertson goes somewhere and Ottinger and Wedgwood work on how they're going to stop Robertson from that place on the ice. It's a goalie training drill. And Reese joked that Robertson ruins these drills all the time and they hate him for it. Because what'll happen is they'll say, okay, this is how you stop Robertson on this play or a scorer on this play. And they'll do it. And then Robertson will start to figure out, okay, this is how I'm going to beat it. And he's good enough to do it.
Sure.
So he basically said to me that what happened was Robertson saw the way Skinner played it, skate against the post, and figured out how to beat it. And one of the issues there is that he had too much time. There's no way Robertson should have had that much time.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, then he doesn't score. But he said Robertson deserves the credit because he's a great practice player, and two, because he spends a lot of practices figuring out how to ruin Ottinger, Wedgwood, and Reese's drills.
Normally, yeah. Well, no one likes a drill buster, whether you're doing it for your own benefit or you just don't know what to do. How much of this was I'll just be blunt, how much of game 3 was flat out the return of Rupe Hintz and the excellence of Rupe Hintz?
Oh, I think it's a lot. And apparently Amber looked at some of the numbers. Amber's the nerd of our group, so he looked at the numbers. Nerd. And he said that the numbers were obvious, that they were clear. And Hintz is not just like, there's some guys in the league who are number one centers because they have to be. Hintz is a legitimate number one center. And they're just a very different team with him on the ice, not only offensively, but defensively. And I thought they were really good. And, Skinner had kind of a weird night. That goal wasn't good, but he made a lot of big saves. Draisaitl was really quiet, so I'm assuming he's going to have a massive game 4. That's about as quiet a game from Draisaitl as we've seen. So, like I said, I expect him to be fantastic. I'm curious to see what Edmonton does lineup-wise. One of the players told me about Ryan McLeod. They said it was really interesting. He kind of kept himself away from the group for game 3. He knew he wasn't playing, so he kind of stayed away from everyone. But he showed up on the off day, like just fresh, new attitude. But this thing on defense, so Stetcher is having surgery. He's out.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
It kind of surprised me. It took so long for it to get out there in the sense that he hasn't been skating with them for a long time. So when, I came here and I said, because basically what happened was in Dallas, they brought Broberg and Philip Kemp. Like Stetcher wasn't even there, and I was kind of like, what's going on here? Because he's better than their ninth defenseman, and they were hemming and hawing, and I was like, okay. And it basically took a couple of days for it to be figured out that he's not healthy enough to play. But it's clear at the very least they're thinking about Broberg. But Chris Knobloch laid it out pretty honestly. He said, look, we're thinking about another defenseman, and we all know who he's talking about, but we've had the same 6 guys all year. Mm-hmm. And that says to me, he's weighing it, but he's not sure it's really the right idea. It's interesting. Like a lot of the Oilers were available on Tuesday. Darnell Nurse wasn't. And that says to me that, Nurse is obviously well aware of, what's going on around there. And, you're one of the highest paid guys, and that's life in the big city. It's not always fair, but that's the way it is. And, I suspect that, Nurse understands some of the narrative around him right now, and you've got to come out and you've got to have a big performance in Game 4. It will be expected and needed of him.
Draisaitl, Nurse, and the Oilers. Big one tonight. Game 4. Dallas leads the series 2-1. All the action gets underway on Sportsnet. It's a Hockey Night in Canada presentation at 8:30. Let me finish with this one. How's Edmonton been for you in the last couple of days? Set the scene for us.
It's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. It's not as hot as Dallas. I'll tell you that much right now. And it sounds like we're going back into a monsoon there for Game 5.
Not dripping when you get to the rink from your walk.
No, it's not quite like that. But there's a buzz here,
of course,
and you could really feel it. Like the fans are excited. There was huge energy around the city Monday night. They really sagged after the game. Yeah. You could really feel it, but it was picking back up today. And there are a lot of fans. Are we going to win Game 4? Are we going to win Game 4? And of course, I told them all they were, because I don't want to get the crap kicked out of me on the streets of northern Alberta. But it'll be wired. It'll be wired on Wednesday night. And I loved Kyle's interview with the anthem singer before the game.
Oh, that was
I thought
awesome.
That was a great touch.
And the crowd was great. We suspect they'll be great again tonight. It's Game 4, the Oilers facing off against the Dallas Stars. Watch this one on Sportsnet starting at 8:30 Eastern. All right, that's it for us. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game on Thursday. We're back with you Friday morning.